I'm Jaime Levine, Executive Director of Elder Law Advocacy. We talk about financial elder abuse a lot on this podcast. I'm very appreciative today to have Scott Pirrello with me. Scott is the head of Elder Abuse Prosecution at the San Diego County District Attorney's Office. He is, I would say, the central figure in the fight against elder abuse in San Diego. He's also recognized national expert on elder fraud and scams. Scott was instrumental in the creation of the San Diego FBI Elder Justice Task Force, the first of its kind, bringing together federal, state, and local partners, including the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, Adult Protective Services, and local law enforcement to investigate and prosecute elder fraud and related crimes. Thank you very much for joining us, Scott.
My pleasure. Nice to be here.
I gave a little bit of an introduction to you. Anything else you'd like to say about yourself or the task force that's been created?
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's a homecoming of sorts because in law school, I actually interned here at Elder Law Advocacy. And maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but those seeds were planted to fight for the elderly and the more vulnerable people.
Mm-hmm.
Like many lawyers, I went to law school here in San Diego, and I had no idea what kind of law I wanted to do when I went to law school. I discovered the San Diego District Attorney's Office and fell in love with this work and the advocacy, and really fell in love with elder abuse because of my connection to my predecessor, Paul Greenwood, who many people in this space are well aware of, and his connection to his parents, the greatest generation. And those were my grandparents. And I helped take care of my grandparents and saw how much they relied on family and myself in their support system. So this whole development of this expertise in elder abuse, it was nothing I ever set out to do, but it's something that organically it just consumes you. Once you get into it and you start working with these victims, you can't stop fighting for them because they really do need a voice.
So true. So you joined the DA's office, and how did you get connected with Paul Greenwood and elder abuse? How did that happen?
Yeah, so when you join the district attorney's office, you really have no idea where you're going to wind up. There's so many specialties. It's incredible the amount of things going on in my office. I walk down the hallway, and there's leaders on every cutting edge issue that's affecting our community: fentanyl, school shootings, narcotics, gang, community enforcement. We started this new juvenile diversion program. I mean, there's just incredible work being done under the leadership of Summer Steffen, who I wouldn't be here without her support. And what happens is you meet people in the office, and like any profession, you seek mentorship. And that's what happened. I met Paul Greenwood, who was a pioneer in the field of elder abuse. He was a career elder abuse prosecutor, one of the first in the country.
Wow.
His generation really started it. And San Diego has a proud tradition because we were maybe one of the first 2 or 3 DA's offices in the country to have a dedicated elder abuse unit. And that's really key for the community because as I travel around and meet prosecutors that love elder abuse and want to be advocates in their communities, they're working a huge caseload, and elder abuse might be a small portion of it. But it's really only when you dedicate a single resource, and the model in our office that Summer Steffen encourages us is you're not just in the courtroom prosecuting people once they commit the crime. One of the pillars of our office is prevention, and we're in one of the safest, large counties and jurisdictions in the country because we're out in the community doing the advocacy, partnering with other agencies and organizations like Elder Law Advocacy, because we can't do it all ourselves. Whether you're talking about physical elder abuse or neglect or this financial elder abuse and these scams, you can't do it. You can't do it as a prosecutor. You need the entire village, and you need to work as a collaborative because there's so many intervention points that we really need to be doing this as a community. And that's what I love about being the elder abuse prosecutor is being in the courtroom is such a small part of my job. And I get to be out in the community and working with organizations like Elder Law Advocacy to work on the more global issues.
Well, that's exactly why we're having this conversation, because it's so important for us to be talking to the community, to seniors, to caregivers, to peers, so that everybody is somewhat aware of what's going on and what steps can be taken in order to prevent or at least address some of these issues that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think that's a big key as us advocates lay out a roadmap for how we're going to fight this effectively. Is we've probably spent too much time at a senior center or in an assisted living talking to a bunch of 60, 70, 80-year-olds. This is a whole of society problem, and we need to start educating the kids in elementary school. They're on the same devices that we're all getting scammed on, no matter how old you are. And so we can't treat it as an elder issue. We need to be talking to the caregivers, the children, the grandchildren, and it's really the only way we're going to bend the curve is if we educate the whole of society on this.
Right. I totally agree. And we're talking about financial elder abuse primarily today, but we're all potential victims. Like, it's not like they are just going after seniors. Seniors are vulnerable in certain ways, but really it's a societal issue. Everybody is potentially vulnerable and everybody is potentially a target.
That's right. I
So-
agree. My saying that I got from some other people in my family, we've passed the saying down, but yes, we're all just next on the conveyor belt. And so everyone should be part of this fight.
Yeah. So I want to first talk about sort of framing the criminal justice system relative to the civil legal system, since I'm on one side and you're on the other, but we're trying to collaborate and we're trying to actually figure out the same kind of goals. So can you just describe what the criminal justice system is comprised of, what the different levels are, how they kind of work together, and then how you see kind of the civil legal system as potentially being in sync with the criminal justice system?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think we take for granted as attorneys understanding the system. But when I talk to even my own parents who have been supporting my career for 20 years, when I have a case that I tell them about, they really don't understand who I represent. They'll say, wait a minute, who are you defending? Or like they still can't quite get it. And when we're picking juries, we run into the same thing. It's interesting. We take for granted that the community understands all of our roles. And so, yes, if somebody goes into a supermarket and trips and falls and injures themselves and they want to go sue that supermarket, they need a civil lawyer. They go and hire that lawyer. And that lawyer is, and them have an attorney-client relationship. And they could go and sue that supermarket for money. And there's a special relationship there. For me, if someone does something bad and breaks into your house and we catch the person that broke into your house, I am going to be the prosecutor that is prosecuting the case to prosecute that person for burglary. You might be the victim of that burglary, but you're not my client. We don't have an attorney-client relationship. You are a very important person. You're the victim in my case, and you're a critical witness. But my job is to represent the state of California, the people. When we get in court, we say, Scott Pirrello for the people, because we represent the state, and we are going to hold that person accountable. And so that is a distinction. And so if you've been scammed, to come back to the scamming framework, you may have lost $50,000 because a scammer told you to go withdraw $50,000 from your bank and then ship it across the country, right? You're the victim. You've just lost that money. You come to the police, the district attorney's office, and maybe we can catch the people that took the money from you. We're going to try to hold them accountable. We're going to try to punish them and try to get you some money back for stealing. But we don't represent you as the victim. And so I do think that there is a place where there's crossover, where you need to have that attorney-client relationship with a civil lawyer, with someone who is going to be advocating for you to look at not just the conduct of the bad guys, but what is everything that happened leading up to that? And are there legal remedies available for anyone along that way that may have been negligent? You could probably explain a lot better than even that I can do, but that would be the place that that there would be crossover. Within the criminal justice system, to answer your question, the functions that we have are that we have investigators who work with our task force. We have detectives from the San Diego Police Department and the Sheriff's Department. And then we have affiliate members with all the other agencies in town, Carlsbad PD, Oceanside PD, Escondido, Chula Vista. So there'll be investigators that are taking reports. Every week we get these fresh reports, these terrible reports of new victims. And those investigators are police officers. They carry guns and they do the investigations and they write search warrants and they try to track down the bad guys and identify the bad guys. Our task force is special because we also have the FBI involved. Now, the FBI are like police investigators, but they are federal investigators. They are our police department for the federal government. And what's unprecedented about our effort are they're all working together out of the same office, sharing information, which is a huge boom to us. So the investigators need to work up a case and investigate a case, and only when they identify who the bad guys are and identify what crimes were committed, then they bring a case to the prosecutor. And at the local level, we are the district attorney's office. We're the county prosecutor. And then on our task force, we have the U.S. attorney, and they are the federal prosecutors. So if we identify a scam ring that's here in San Diego, our goal is always to see if we could go up the chain to get the real bad guys, right? Who are the people making the big money that are really encouraging this behavior and benefiting from it, the ringleaders of these networks. And to do that, we need the U.S. Attorney's Office, the federal prosecutors, to go and do these really big, large-scale indictments. Mm-hmm. So that's how the criminal justice system functions. And the whole time that's going on, there could be a civil law process, behind the scenes, helping victims with restraining orders, helping victims. And like I said, I'd like to hear more from you about how you see the role of a civil attorney in this system.
Yeah, no, we are going to get to that in a little bit. I wanted to just, you did talk about sort of the hierarchy of the law enforcement and how it gets to the DA's office and where it goes from that. It also seems like the adult protective services is kind of the front line for the criminal justice system. Is that an accurate portrayal?
Yes, with elder abuse cases, we really could not do our job without our relationship with adult protective services. So Adult Protective Services is a county agency here in California. In some states, it's statewide, but here it's by county. And so Adult Protective Services workers are social workers. They're not police officers, so they can't necessarily barge into a house and do an investigation like a police officer would. But the real frontline defense for any form of elder abuse is that hotline. The Adult Protective Services hotline is what we want everyone to be aware of in reporting any form of elder abuse. You don't have to know that a crime was committed. If you merely suspect any form of elder abuse, if you're worried about your neighbor because you see them, maybe it's unusual financial activity, maybe it's their son or daughter who is a drug addict or has mental health issues, and you see some concerning behavior, we want people to call Adult Protective Services to get them kind of on the radar of the county agencies that can protect seniors. But Adult Protective Services in San Diego is getting over 20,000 referrals a year.
Wow.
So the hotline's working, but that's how much awareness and how many referrals are coming in. And so, yes, they are the front line because they will respond to the referrals that they get where it's appropriate to actually go out, try to get face-to-face with a client, and then it's Adult Protective Services who can call in law enforcement, that can call the DA's office and say, hey, this something serious is going on here. Mm-hmm. Now, specific to the scams, what makes Adult Protective Services such a valued member of our task force is that we know from all the different types of elder abuse that underreporting is a big problem for us because elders don't report. Mm-hmm. We only know about 1 in 15, 1 in 20 cases probably of elder abuse. But the Adult Protective Services are getting referrals from mandated reporters, specifically the financial institutions. So that's key because it might be a victim that is too afraid to report it. They're ashamed. They have not reported it yet, but a banker, even though a transaction has already occurred, they are required to submit a report to say, hey, someone came into the bank, they looked distressed, someone was standing over their shoulder in a suspicious way, and they file those reports, and our task force is getting those because we have adult protective service workers on the front line and working with our task force members.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I think mandated reporting has been around for a very long time when it comes to medical personnel and when it comes to social workers, but adding financial institutions was really a game changer and very, very important. So it's fantastic that that's in place. The law itself, is something that we as an organization have tried to strengthen, and that's something that we're trying to do some more in the future. I think what I'd like to do, what I would say about the civil legal system and what our role is, very often, you mentioned 20,000 reports that come into adult protective services. Law enforcement can be overwhelmed. So if it's not, if the evidence isn't there, if it's a case where law enforcement is just stretched too thin, there are remedies that are available in the civil legal system. So it's really important that an organization like ours gets called, even if people are unsure about what the facts are, or if the police are not investigating it, there is potentially a remedy that we can help with. So that's something that's really important for everyone in the community to realize. There has to be kind of this back and forth so that victims end up with all the resources that are available.
And I agree. And I think we need to do better in diverting victims, even once they've reported to police, for them to be aware of this resource guide, so to speak, of saying, hey, you might also want to, consult with Elder Law Advocacy or contact a civil attorney to talk about what happened to you to see what remedies are available. Because it's sad sometimes I see and talk to victims who are so vested in a criminal case being filed, and not every case rises to the level of being a crime, even though it's absolutely abuse or elder abuse. And then we have other cases where we know a crime occurred, but we can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt for one reason or another. And so I always am trying to push victims to seek other answers and not just put all their eggs in one basket in hoping that the police investigate and everything comes together and a case comes to the DA's office and they get the result they need. So
right. You mentioned beyond a reasonable doubt. That's an important concept because the standard is lower for cases that we're taking on. For criminal enforcement, you guys have to prove a lot. And for us to be able to take a case or win a case, we just have to make it more likely than not that the crime occurred or the wrong occurred.
Right.
So that's another reason why people should be contacting civil legal attorneys.
There's no question. We not only do we have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but we have to get 12 jurors to be unanimous.
Right.
And I think when you explain that to people, they understand, because a lot of times they're disappointed. I'll call them and say, whatever, the sheriff investigated this case, but I'm sorry. I think this or I know this happened to you. I'm not saying it didn't happen to you, but we can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And what I'm telling them is that we're not going to be able to convince 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt. And a lot of times, kind of outside of the scam conversation, but just in elder financial abuse, when you're dealing with family members, it becomes especially difficult to prove that sometimes, especially when you have maybe siblings who are pointing the finger at each other, saying this person took advantage of mom and dad or vice versa, because it's just very difficult to accept one version over the other. You're often in a position where you're trying to say, well, who's the good child here? Who's the bad child here? Is there some gray area in between? And that's where you're never going to get 12 jurors to all agree on, that relationship and who was supposed to have power of attorney after dad died and take after mom. That gets very complicated.
Right. Another distinction would be if a client comes to us and alleges something, we can write a demand letter. We don't have to believe that we're going to be able to take it to court and win the case, blah, blah, blah. we can just write a demand letter, and very often that's very effective. Like when
Yeah,
I started working as an attorney, I couldn't believe what a letter could accomplish.
it's
I
amazing.
seriously could not believe it. But that's not really something you can do. If you see a case where you're like, well, it's not a very good case, but I'll write a letter for you. That's not something you can do.
No, and people ask us,
Right.
unfortunately, ethically, we can't use the weight of the district attorney's office, right, which comes with it the threat of police or government intervention or criminal prosecution. So people will call us, or they'll often CC us on an email that they send to the person that they're trying to challenge, and they think, oh, if I CC the DA's office, I might scare someone. But no, we cannot use the authority of the DA's office. It's so unethical, and we obviously have to live. Every decision we make and every choice that we make is always with the strictest ethical standards involved. Not to say that civil attorneys aren't just as ethical, but they have that attorney-client privilege, which is a little different than what our role is, which is to be a neutral arbiter looking for the truth. We follow the evidence and the facts, and we are always striving just to get to the truth in our cases.
Right. We are advocates. So when a client comes in here, we are trying to figure out how to put them in a better position, or the position they should have been in had the crime or the wrong not occurred. So that's a really important distinction as well. I just wanted to mention one other thing that you and I totally agree on, which is that education is absolutely paramount for these kinds of things. And that's why we're having this conversation.
That's right.
Because we want people to know about the kinds of cases that we're seeing and the kinds of scams that are out there, and just how difficult it is for everyone to navigate it.
Yeah, I agree. And the more we talk about it, it needs to be out there every single day, because people need to see these reminders to know what to expect when they're, trying to sift through all this garbage that's hitting us, 1,000 pieces of texts and emails and pop-ups and things on our phones and our computers every day. And people are always just saying, is this a scam? You think this is a scam? You think this is a scam? So we need to be educating and putting the most current scams and that information out there so people know what are the threats right now today.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue, because let's talk about some scams. So the way that I have decided to approach this is I have two kind of broad categories of scams that I want to discuss. And then I have some nitty-gritty details about how those scams work and what people should be able to do if they are victims or they suspect that they are victims, things like that.
Okay.
So one of the big scams is pig butchering. So can you describe what that is and just how diabolical it is?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's got a terrible name. People hear this, and it sounds just like an awful thing to say. And a lot of people, once they hear what pig butchering is, when you explain it to them, they say, "Oh yeah, that's what it is." And I can tell you that probably everyone that's listening to this has been contacted by a pig butcherer. Every single person.
Right.
And the way that you've been contacted are those innocent little random text messages that you get that you can't figure out because it just says, "Hi, how are you?" Or it might be something more specific that says, "Hey, you want to go hike Torrey Pines tomorrow?" Or
are we on for lunch?
Something like that. And and people say, "What is this?" That's pig butchering. So pig butchering are investment scams. And what they why they're so diabolical is that there is a huge trust or romance feature to them. What happens is you get contacted either with one of those simple text messages, or most of our victims, I believe, are getting contacted on Facebook through the Messenger program on Facebook. And what happens is when you join these, you like a group. It might be a local organization. I always just use as an extreme example, like you're part of the San Diego Bird Watching Club, and that you just follow that group because you're interested in bird watching every 6 months. And there's people that post things every day about bird watching, and then someone messages you from that group, and we'll start talking to you about bird watching in San Diego. And you start a friendship. You start talking about your favorite bird watching things. And this will go on, and then the conversations will become more common. The conversation will shift maybe from Facebook Messenger to WhatsApp or one of these other Signal or Telegram, one of these encrypted communication applications, and a real friendship will start. And it might even graduate to phone conversations. And this will go on for weeks and weeks and months. I just heard from a survivor, someone who had fallen victim to the pig butchering investment scam. And it was incredible to hear from her. She was a wonderful woman in her 50s, very bright, on top of the world, raising teenagers, independent, owned her own house, is very successful. And she said what was so crazy is that she had this relationship going on for about 5 months before the scammer asked for a penny.
Wow.
So that's where it comes with trust. Oftentimes it does turn into something romantic, but it doesn't have to.
Right.
It's a trust scam because it might just be someone that's your friend or you just become very close. They're talking to you about their problems. You're talking to them about your problems. And then there's some emergency or they have some great investment idea. And
Right.
the way that they get your money is to convince you to invest in a cryptocurrency investment where the returns are going to be astronomical. And they'll get you to give them a few dollars at first, and they'll say, you can make, 100% of your money, 50% returns. And you will actually be given like a banking or like a Charles Schwab. It looks like, a financial application on your phone where you give $1,000 and you look a week later, you have $1,400 or $1,600. And you're saying, wow, this is really working. And the money keeps going up and up. And then they ask you to invest more money. And sometimes I've even heard that the scammers will send money. They'll send cash, $1,000 to make you think, wow, I'm really making some money here. And this will go on again for weeks or months until you've gotten to the point where you've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars. Often people transfer their entire 401k, their whole portfolio, everything they have invested that they're making 5% on a year. They say, wow, why not do this? And they put their entire portfolio in, and then the entire thing is a sham. The financial online marketplace that they've been using is a complete sham. It's all fake charts and numbers and everything. And the people that they've been talking to, the scammers, are in these dormitories in Southeast Asia. They're in Myanmar and Cambodia and Thailand. And a lot of them are unfortunately trafficking victims themselves. They've been enslaved in these office buildings over there. And you could Google pig butchering in Myanmar and you'll see pictures of it. It's incredible to see the extent of this operation because they're making hundreds of billions of dollars. That's the reality. This is a huge, huge business with national security implications because we don't know where all this money's going. It's obviously going to terrible organizations and maybe governments that are raiding, American consumers for this. So this is the scam where we're seeing the highest losses in the country, the highest loss amounts because people are now routinely emptying their entire investment portfolio into this. And the saddest part with all of these, Jamie, is the money can't be recovered. Once it's gone, especially when you're talking about being sent with this new cryptocurrency, the money's gone and people are just left completely devastated with very little recourse.
Right. And so there, since it's this drawn out friendship, romance, relationship that's created, and then the slaughter comes where they finally figure out that they're basically just being scammed, they lose all their money and they also lose probably a sense of self because they've been so invested psychologically in what's going on that it must be devastating in every way.
It is. It's frightening for us as advocates. We see people who are suicidal after going through something like this because they're completely taken financially. They're wiped out. And then, yes, they have that sense of loss and grief of losing a love interest. And then they have the devastation of having to go back to their family and tell them what's been happening. And often the most frightening phone call for our victims is to call their children and tell them that they've just been through this 5 or 6 month odyssey in talking to someone every day and getting completely wrapped up in it. And and we need to also be working to reduce that stigma, because we want to create a safe place for these victims to come forward and not be embarrassed, because the reason, as we're talking about, how focused and devoted these scammers are to spend that much money and that much time developing these systems, and then literally talking for hours on the phone with people. That's why people are falling for these scams. It's because the scammers are so good at what they do.
Yeah. And the technology is just incredible that they're using. And I think I'm going to come back to this, but I think AI makes what you're describing, like this app or whatever they see on their screen, AI makes it absolutely impossible to discern between what's real and what's not real.
Yes.
So, like, how are we supposed to navigate that as mere human beings? It seems impossible.
You're right. You're right. And everyone, that's the big, buzzword in every industry, but especially when it comes to these scams, we're reaching a tipping point. That is why right now I feel like we are at a critical moment before we go over the edge, because the numbers of losses and victims is going up 30-40% a year. We need to bend the curve. There's other countries that are bending the curve. They're doing more than what we're doing here in the United States. And people are worried about the advent of AI. And people always say, "Oh, are you worried about AI?" And my answer is, look how good the scammers are doing without AI.
Right.
You're talking about in San Diego alone last year, our numbers, it's over $140 million a year, just leaving the bank accounts of San Diegans. Now, the FTC numbers nationally, you can't even comprehend it, but the estimates are up almost $200 billion. So people say, "Are you worried about AI?" I'm saying, look how good they're doing just without AI, and it's very scary. So my hope is that we can find AI that will save us, right?
Yes.
Before the AI is developed that can destroy us. And I do think and hope that these amazing technology companies that all of us rely on, that they will develop the AI tools to prevent the foreign phone numbers, the spoofing, the foreign IP addresses masquerading as American computers and cell phones that are calling us, that look like our neighbor when we look at our phone, when it's really a phone call from India or somewhere else. And so we need the AI to really be the firewall that prevents the scams from killing us,
Yeah.
metaphorically speaking.
Great point. So that's just to come back to the pig butchering approach. There's another kind of category of scams that I want to bring up, which is the one that is directly introducing an emergency, a crisis, something that has to happen now, or else the victim is going to be in jail. The victim's going to lose everything. The victim's son or daughter is going to end up in jail. Or like there's this whole category of very, very also diabolical scams that just basically play on your psychology to make it happen immediately. And if you don't do it, there are consequences. So can you talk about those scams?
Yeah, it's all fear-based, and it's really effective. So the pig butchering that we were talking about is the highest loss amounts, the highest dollar amount. But when you talk about the scam that is impacting the most people around the country, here in San Diego and in most places, and when I say most, it's well over 75% of all scam activities, the starting point for those is some sort of technology glitch. Mm-hmm. It's either the pop-up ad on your home screen that says your computer's broken and you need to call Microsoft support. You could Google this also and look for what it looks like, but sometimes it's even like literally red sirens are going around and it's making a lot of noise and it's saying, "Don't turn your computer off, don't turn your computer off." This is impacting seniors at a greater scale. So when we talk about elder financial abuse and elder scams, the tech scam really is impacting more seniors. The pig butchering, believe it or not, they don't discriminate. They're going after 20-year-olds as much as they're going after 60-year-olds. But when you think about maybe that preying on a senior's lack of sophistication when it comes to technology, that's really where they're preying in a very effective way. So you have the screen that locks up and you call the Microsoft support phone number. That in itself is a very innocent phone call. When they call that first phone number, they think they're talking to Microsoft, and Microsoft is going to help them solve the problem. And how are they going to do it? Well, they're going to do a free scan of their computer. So they're having the victims accept a remote access program on their computer so that the scammers can now see inside the victim's computer where they're controlling the mouse, right? And once they're inside, what do you think they're looking for? They're looking for the banking icon, because right away they will say, oh no, right? This is where the fear starts. And the victim saying, what do you mean, oh no? Oh no, this isn't good. We could see that you have you bank with Chase Bank. Well, we could see that you're being hacked. Like, we're scanning your computer and there is a very serious hacking going on by maybe Russians or North Koreans. And because you're being hacked, we can see that your personal information is connected to child pornography or like a Mexican drug cartel investigation. And then they'll drop the FBI, the FTC, the Treasury Department. So it just went from, well, your computer's locked up, and all of a sudden something very scary is happening. They mentioned the scariest thing that they can, which is child pornography or, the drug cartels or you're in trouble because your name is associated with it. And what's brilliant about these scammers is that they will then transfer, right? The Microsoft person was the opener, and then they go to the closer because you're still on the line. They've got the remote software on there, and they will tell the victim, okay, I'm going to transfer you now to Chase Bank because all your money is at risk. And so they'll transfer you, and then you're talking to a different person. So it's very credible. Sometimes they even end that call, and they'll give you another phone number. They'll say, you need to call Chase Bank. Or they'll say, Chase Bank is about to call you. And of course, the victim looks at their phone, and the phone number is spoofed. It'll say, oh, Chase Bank is calling me. So it all looks very legitimate, and it's terrifying. And the way that they're getting the money from our victims is that they're convincing them that because they're hacked, that all their money is at risk, and it needs to be moved out of the account that it's currently in and put in a secure treasury account until this investigation can be completed. So that is how people are getting wiped out and why they're able to get so much money. And the technology hook is, I just want to mention while we're talking about it, Microsoft is by far the most common. The other ones that they're using is a PayPal, like just an unauthorized charge on PayPal, and they're trying to figure out how someone was able to use your PayPal. Same hook. They want to get in and do a virus scan. Or they'll use the most common virus companies, McAfee and Norton. Those are very common. And that's just their way in the door. We call it, that's the hook to get the victim on the line. And so that whole scenario that I just went through is the most common. You also mentioned the grandparent scam. That is probably second to that is, the phone call that your grandchild or your son or daughter is in trouble. And they most usually involves a car accident where the person they've hit is pregnant. Like, when you see these stories on the news, someone lost $30,000 to the grandma scam, people might laugh and say, how could they fall for that? People aren't understanding the fear that the people are using. And someone might say, I know my grandchild's voice. This couldn't happen to me. When we talk to most of our victims, I could tell you that very few of them say they actually talk to their grandchild. It's usually a lawyer. It's a smooth-talking lawyer that speaks perfect English and is saying, I'm here with your child, your grandchild, and maybe they're even screaming in the background, right? They hear someone in distress, and they think it's their grandchild, but it's really the smooth-talking lawyer that's saying, you have to send money to get them out of this mess or they're going to be in more trouble. And then it's so devastating. After people give the initial payment there, then they call back, and of course, what happens? Well, it gets scarier. That woman that they hit yesterday that was pregnant, well, now she's had a miscarriage. And now your son or daughter's on the hook for manslaughter, whatever it is.
God.
And it really sends people into, this is trauma. Even after you tell them that this is, that it's a scam, even if they haven't lost money, this is a very traumatic thing for people to go through, all of this stuff. And that's also being lost because there's not enough being done to help these victims get through the emotional trauma of all this stuff. the rest of us might go on with our lives and say, oh, thank God we stopped someone before they lost, all their money. But that trauma of that being forced into that emergency, kind of fight or flight moment of you need to go move your money right now, or else something terrible is going to happen. I think that's being lost on us when we just talk about, scams in general.
Yeah. So that initial contact, I think it's really important to point out that you never know where it's going to come from. And once kind of society figures out that you're getting a text from the IRS isn't working, or you're getting a text from your grandkid isn't working, they're going to move to whatever it is that's going to work. It's not like this is a static scam approach. This is something that morphs every minute, and the scammers are probably sitting at ChatGPT right now going, the grandparent scam isn't working anymore. What can I do next to really access people's psychology and money?
There's no question they're studying our behavior, because we do see that. We see that in real time when we read police reports. Every couple of weeks, we'll see some little nuance, some little change that we will sit there as a task force and say, what are they thinking? Like, why are they doing this?
Right.
Why are they doing that? They're pivoting. They're changing the behavior.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back to one thing you said about seniors being particularly vulnerable when it comes to technology. One thing we saw during COVID, so we have probably 150,000 people in our database. So, and those are all seniors, basically, mostly, say 90%. A lot of our clients, especially in their 80s and 90s, at that point, 2020, had pretty much decided they were not going to use technology. Like, they had sworn off computers. They had just made that decision. COVID changed that. Like, everybody had to get on a computer in order to access the bank, in order to access buying anything. Like, stores were closed. You couldn't get out of your house for a couple of months. So we had a lot of people get into technology because they were forced to. And those people, I think, are particularly vulnerable because they have no background. They had no interest. They had really no experience at all with it. And now when you have this kind of approach by just criminal elements, it's just impossible to, it's impossible for all of us, but for those people in particular, it's really terrible.
Just for example, we just saw a couple of weeks ago something very sophisticated where the scammer is able to get into the victim's device and then manipulate that two-factor authentication process, because they're remotely into the victim's device, and then they want to access the online banking, and they're triggering the two-factor authentication where the victim's getting a text message and approving it so that the scammer can get in. So yes, they are so sophisticated, and it's frightening, because you could see how you or I could easily fall for that. It's all happening on your device, and it's all the normal steps that you would go through, but it's being manipulated by people who really are using the technology against us in a diabolical way.
We use Microsoft here. I don't want to give away too much information, but it requires us to get authenticated all the time. So I'll get a pop-up. I want to get into Teams. I want to get into Microsoft Word, whatever it is. And then sometimes I'm in the middle of, I have multiple screens open and multiple Microsoft applications open, and something will pop up and say, okay, time to authenticate. And I'm like, what are we authenticating? Yeah. Should I put my password in here? I just don't know. And then I have to start deconstructing what I was working on, and I have this open, this open, this open. So yeah, we're all vulnerable.
Yeah, it's overwhelming for all of us. And yeah, the DA's office is this place with very sophisticated attorneys and crime fighters and people who are always on the lookout for these things. And our own office will send out phishing attempts, to try to see what the percentage is, and they get quite a few people. They'll send the report that says 20% of people in the district attorney's office clicked on something that they shouldn't have in an email. So yeah, we're all vulnerable, and that's why it's important when I go out and educate the community. I tell them there's two prongs to this. One is the scam itself. And whether it's pig butchering or one of these technology scams, there's another really sophisticated one, the refund scam. We could come back to that one. But that's the first part, is being fooled. And you might feel embarrassed and ashamed at that point, but the money is still in your pocket. And so I go back and forth in my own head as to what's the most effective education. And I do think that now, because the scams are coming at us from all over the place, that it's actually less important to keep track of what the particular scam was. The more important education piece is, how are they getting the money? Like, we're here in San Diego, the money's in our wallet, right? It's in your bank account here.
Mm-hmm.
How are the bad guys in India and China and the Caribbean, how are they getting the money? And when I ask an audience full of people that, they start scratching their head. They're like, oh yeah, because I've been tricked. Now there's another step to the scam, which is you're going to pay us.
Right.
So if we focus on those payment methods, that's how it's going to trigger something. That's the red flag where someone's going to be like, wait a minute, I heard something about this. I'm not doing this anymore.
Awesome. So let's talk about those methods. What are these scammers using? What have they been using up to now? And what are the trends?
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about earlier, where we see them pivoting and changing. It's really remarkable. When we started this task force of ours, the San Diego Elder Justice Task Force, right before COVID, 2019, we were investigating almost primarily gift card investigations at that time. It was overwhelmingly the majority of our cases. People say, what do you mean gift cards? Our victims would fall victim to whatever the scam was, and they were told in order to pay whatever they needed to pay, they needed to go to Walmart, Target, Lowe's, or Home Depot and buy thousands of dollars in gift cards. They just scratch that little tab off the back and give the scammers, it's like a credit card number, and then from anywhere in the world, the scammers can pull the money off of those cards. So that's where we were seeing millions of dollars being moved in gift cards. Now, it's still a threat. We still need to educate people, but it's a fraction of the cases now. It's really remarkable. We don't see a ton of gift card cases anymore because they've moved on to other much more effective ways to get a ton of money from people very quickly. And so usually when people have fallen for one of these scams, the first ask might be to wire money. That is really a very effective way to get a lot of money. We'll see people being asked to wire $50,000, $70,000 at a time. And people are told to lie to their banks to say they're buying a property, right? They're investing in a property on the other side of the country. My sister needs help with an investment or something. And so they're going to their bank. The bankers might ask one or two questions like, hey, do you know where your money's going? The scammers are telling our victims. Sadly, we know that a lot of our victims go into the bank with the phone on speakerphone. The scammers will say, we need to listen to you because there's the scary hack is going on and you can't tell anyone about it. And they'll even tell them, someone in your bank is in on this hack. And we're going to try to figure out like who the mole is. You're going to help us in the investigation. It might be your banker. So keep your phone on because we want to hear what they say to you. But they're really doing that to terrorize the victims. So anyway, wiring money is a huge way. And sometimes they're wiring across the country, and then sometimes they're wiring overseas. Now, when they wire within the country, I want to add from a law enforcement standpoint, a lot of people say, oh, I wired my money to this bank in Kansas. Go to Kansas. Go kick the door down. The scammers have my money. They're there in Kansas. Yeah. What do you think happens when we go to Kansas and knock on the door and say, we're here to get the money back? Who do you think we find in Kansas?
Someone who doesn't know what you're talking about?
It's another victim.
Right.
It's another elder scam victim that has fallen victim to the same scam, and then they've been told in order to get their money back, they need to receive this $50,000 coming from San Diego and then send it somewhere else, right? Because the scammers are so sophisticated and difficult to catch because they're smart and they're creating several breaks in the paper trail so that it's harder to trace the ultimate, benefiter of this money. So it's very sophisticated, but that's what happens. They're usually sending money and it will hop around the country a few times to other victims before it goes overseas. So again, very sophisticated. So on the issue of payment, wiring money is huge. The other way is that they're telling our victims to go to their banks and withdraw tens of thousands of dollars in cash. Same story. They're usually telling our victims a script. They're doing a home construction project or something to tell the banker why they're taking out $20,000, $30,000 in cash. And once they have the cash, they're either told to wrap it up and ship it somewhere, or what's really shocking to us as a community is now we're seeing, and our task force is focusing almost entirely on these cases now, where they're sending couriers. Couriers are being dispatched to people's houses to pick up these bundles of cash. It's really shocking.
And the couriers know nothing about it. They're just a courier company or Uber or whatever.
Well, that's up for debate, Jamie. It's an interesting question. So they are using different types of couriers. Couriers come in different varieties.
Right.
So yes, we are seeing, shockingly, Uber and Lyft drivers being used more frequently. And so we need to do education there. We need Uber and Lyft drivers, and those corporations are doing better and working and helping us in our investigations. But yes, there is a feature on your Uber app to pick up a package and deliver a package. So that's in the unknowing variety. But we're also seeing a lot of couriers who are working directly for these money laundering organizations. And so primarily where I always say we're really under attack, which it feels like, because there's so many of these cases every day here in San Diego where members of the scam organization are being dispatched from Los Angeles to come down here and pick up cash. And these same people that are being sent down here are actually being contacted all over California, up to Washington, Oregon, out to Las Vegas and Phoenix. So there's a hub in the San Gabriel Valley out of Los Angeles. Primarily, these are Chinese nationals. These are money laundering organizations made up of Chinese nationals that are being used to be dispatched over the entire western United States. And then there's another hub on the East Coast that is going around. And so these folks will be sent once a victim falls victim to the scam, right? The bad guys in these other countries where the call centers are, they'll call Los Angeles and say, okay, we have a victim in San Diego. They have $20,000 in cash. Send someone to go pick it up. And so we are arresting these couriers where we can, and we're prosecuting them and having some success. And we're hoping to disrupt these money laundering organizations that are facilitating all of this fraud for the scammers overseas.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Wow. What else is being sent? So you said cash. What else?
Yeah. So to go back to this kind of evolving scam strategy where we see changes and say, oh, what's that? Right? What is this? This is something new. Maybe about a year and a half ago, we're just looking at the new reports coming in every day, and our counterparts in our task force with the FBI said, we're noticing something very new, something that we haven't seen before. What are we talking about? Gold bars. And I'm saying, I'm doing this for 5 years. I'm saying, what are they talking about? Gold bars. Our victims are falling victim to same scams, but again, now it's time to pay. And the scammers are telling our victims to go buy hundreds of thousands of dollars in gold bullion. I didn't know you could even do this. So I learned a bar of gold, maybe the size of my iPhone, is worth about $75,000.
Wow.
But you don't see, you're really unable to get a bar of gold like this. So what they do is they sell gold. It's like the size of a flash drive, and you need a lot of them. So I've seen pictures in my own cases where victims have to lay out all the gold they bought, and it could cover a tabletop where it's, 20, 30 pieces of gold by weight. They just measure it by weight. And so they go to gold dealers. People say, where do you get gold? There are storefronts throughout San Diego County. There are precious metals dealers. Some pawn shops have gold bullion and silver for sale. And so people are being sent into these stores, or you could wire money to these stores, and they're buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gold. And it actually plays into the scam. So remember, the scammers are telling them that all their money is at risk. Mm-hmm. And our seniors, they know from back in the day that gold is a hedge against uncertain economic times. So it kind of makes sense to them. Like, all your bank accounts and your retirement account is at risk. And so go buy gold, and we'll keep the gold safe for you in a safe deposit box. until we get to the bottom of this investigation. That's making sense to the people being scammed, and then they're packaging up their gold and giving it, thinking it's going to be kept, for safekeeping, and they think the courier is someone that works for the Treasury Department because they're getting these very sophisticated receipts. Again, people say, how could someone fall for that? People are getting, it looks like a check, like a federal Treasury check with all the fancy colors and the color marks. They're getting that each time they give money to the scammer. So it's a promissory note or a check where they think they're holding the value still, and they're just giving the gold to secure it. So very sophisticated. And then on top of the gold, we have a new battle, which is really what's the scariest thing right now, which is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And this is twofold. People can buy Bitcoin on their computer. They could create a bank account. A lot of times they don't even know that the bank account that they're buying is converting their money into Bitcoin when they open up this account, and then they're kind of wiring money. It feels the same way as wiring money. And then we have people going to convenience stores and using Bitcoin ATM machines. And this is really devastating. Thankfully, in California, they passed a law that went into effect last January where they said that the maximum transaction amount is $1,000 per machine.
Okay. Prior
to that, we were seeing victims put $18,000, $19,000 in one clip just right into the machine, and the money's gone. Right. The scammers, what they do is they send you a barcode. They text you a picture of a barcode. So you get sent to Circle K or some liquor store or some smoke shop where there's one of these Bitcoin ATM machines. They look just like a regular ATM machine. You walk up to it and you scan that barcode. Usually you have to run your driver's license. And then when you scan that barcode, it says, okay, that's where the address that you're going to send your money to, and then you feed your money in the machine. And sadly, even though there's a $1,000 limit, now, of course, we're seeing our victims being told to drive all over town, put $1,000 in that machine, put $1,000 in that machine, put $1,000 in that machine. So it's still a very effective way. And anyone, that's just a huge red flag nowadays. If you're asked to pay for anything, if a contractor's working at your house, if a relative asks you, if anyone is asking you to pay for something in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, that is 100% scam. End your communication with that person. Don't be scared of whatever scenario they've told you, whatever emergency is happening. It's 100% a scam.
You mentioned that Bitcoin can be bought at ATMs and vending machines, but of course it can be bought over a computer, like anything electronic. It's just basically a digital currency. So
Yes.
There are lots of other ways that cryptocurrency is used to transfer value. And then the other thing that we've seen is part of the romance scam or the pig butchering, the investment that's introduced after 4 or 5 months is a cryptocurrency investment. Right. And what really propels that narrative is that there are all these crypto millionaires that you see driving Lamborghinis and
right. There's a gold rush. There's a gold rush in the crypto world. So yes, and people are seeing it on TV and they want a piece of the action. So, but right. There's no doubt.
So we had, when we had first heard of the electronic, I just want to actually go back to one thing that we had discussed a little bit earlier with the technology scams. One thing that we had seen that we had never seen before is when the scammer had gone into our client's bank account because the victim had been told that he had accidentally deposited $40,000 into this guy's account. The money was actually taken out of the victim's HELOC. So the victim had a HELOC, home equity line of credit, that he had never, I don't think he had ever used it, but he had maybe $200,000-$300,000 available. And he was told, okay, now I want you to look in your savings account because I just put $40,000 right. in there by accident. I was trying to refund 40 and I put in 40,000. So I need you to take the 40,000, go to the bank and wire it to me immediately, or I'm going to lose my job. My family is going to starve. I need you to do it right away because I can't let that happen to me. So, I mean, that's just another sort of diabolical.
That's what I was talking about. That refund scam is probably right below the technology scam that I explained, is probably the second most prevalent scam we see, and it's very effective. And they are manipulating people's online banking in two ways. One way is there's a way for the scammers to freeze someone's computer screen and then manipulate the numbers. But the other common way is, how you said, is they could slide 20,000 from someone's own savings account into their checking account, and they're watching their computer screen and seeing the numbers go up. And the big hook for that are these virus scans, because what they're doing is they're offering a free technology scan for a very low amount of money, like $149.
Right.
And people say, oh, that sounds right. And they'll convince them, oh, when you bought your computer, you paid for the service plan. And now we're going to renew your service plan, and we're going to do a free virus scan. It sounds very innocent.
Right.
And then what happens is they might do the virus scan. Again, the scammers are very clever, and they'll hang up the phone. They don't come after you that day. They might call you the next day, a week later, and they'll say, oh, we're running a special, or there was some mistake. We're going to give you back your $149. Oh, this is fantastic. I'm getting my money back. Yeah, we're going to send you your $149. And again, like you said, our victims are looking at their computer screen and they see 1, 4, 9, and then 0, 0. And then the person has this meltdown, right? Oh no, I messed up the decimal point.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll, like they said, the thing that you're not hearing when you see this on the news is the scary part. Because they'll tell you, we're in India, my wife's pregnant, they're going to kill us.
Right.
I just gave you $15,000 and you need, and they might even say, hey, you could keep $1,000. Just go to the bank and send me $14,000. And people, because they're good people and they're trusting and they don't want this unjust enrichment, they go and send this refund money back, and it's terrible. And then, of course, once they get that first check, what do they tell them? They tell our seniors, we didn't get the money. You didn't do it right.
Right.
And then our victims, it's not about greed. It's not in the old days, the Nigerian lottery. It's not about greed. It's really at that point, then they're feeling foolish because the scammer's saying it didn't work. You need to go back to your bank because I'm going to get killed. You need to send this $14,000 you owe us. And they'll send it again and they'll keep trying. And I've seen police reports where 3, 4, 5 days in a row, the victim is so frustrated, they think they're not doing it right, and they keep sending another $15,000. It's crazy.
That's exactly what happened in the case I just described. He sent he wired the $40,000.
Yep.
The scammer took another $40,000 out of his HELOC and put it into a savings account and said, it didn't work, you have to send it again. He sent it a second time. Scammer did it a third time. Said, I need you to, and that's when he figured out that it was a scam. And then in terms of the gold, we just had a case, a couple in San Diego, you might have heard of this case actually, they sent $3.5 million in gold, their entire life savings, because they were terrified about what was about to happen. They were hacked and they were going to lose everything unless they put it in gold and sent it for safekeeping. Just terrifying.
We've had over maybe a half dozen victims in the last year that have lost over $1 million to that exact scam that I talked about, the couple you're talking about, probably the same way. And again, people say, why are they doing this? Why is the victim keep sending more? The victims that I've gotten close to and I'm working with, this is over the course of maybe 2 or 3 months. And again, it really hit me when you talk to the victim. It wasn't that they were fooled again every single day, but the victims are trying to get it right. They're being told that there's a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
And the victim said to me, like, I am so organized and so professional in everything I do in my life. This wasn't an old, feeble person. This is someone living their best life in their late 60s, early 70s, maybe. And they're saying, I just wanted to get it right. Like I would never leave anything in my life unresolved. So I woke up every morning like, I need to solve this problem. And she was getting aggravated like that it wasn't fixing the problem. And of course, being told that all this money was secure and at the end of it, she would get it all back. But before she realized it, $1 million is gone. And it's 10, 12 different withdrawals. It's not all at once.
Right. And they'll never stop. Like if you send money, they will never stop coming back to you until someone figures out what's going on.
That's exactly right.
So getting back to the crypto seems to be built for crime. I mean, it's distributed and encrypted and can't be traced. So it just seems to be perfect for criminals, as you described. So
Yeah, there's these Bitcoin ATM machines. I mean, there are advocates in the crypto world that are fighting for these machines. I could tell you there are certain countries where they've already banned them.
right,
Unless you are a savvy crypto investor, I would say that there's nothing that these machines are good for other than fraud. It's creating a transaction that does not have an adequate paper trail, and it's being used for nefarious purposes. So for people that are listening in the lens of preventing elder scams, they need to know, just as a blanket rule, if anyone is asking you to put money into a Bitcoin ATM machine, you don't have to say, is this a scam? Yes, it is a scam. The interesting thing about these machines is that it is a kiosk, just like you would go up in the airport to buy a Mexican peso.
mm-hmm.
Like, you're buying a digital currency. And there's a lot of places you could go to buy Bitcoin. Again, if you or I wanted to buy some for an investment purpose, there are other places you would go. The exchange rate, is what I've learned, on these machines is so terrible that no savvy crypto investor would ever buy Bitcoin on one of these machines, because you're giving money away by doing it.
Right.
You could just go, open up a Coinbase account or whatever, something like that, and buy it somewhere else. So it's a huge red flag as soon as cryptocurrency gets involved in any transaction. And people are lured because they might think it's the new fresh thing and the way to be savvy, but really it's fraud. It's all fraud.
Yeah. Another variation we saw with a client was he had, I forget how he had contacted the scammer, but he was convinced to invest his money in crypto through Coinbase. But Coinbase, and I actually haven't researched this, but Coinbase has a browser. And so he was using the Coinbase browser, and the scammer had spoofed a crypto investment website. And so it wasn't actually Coinbase. Coinbase was just the browser.
Wow.
And he ended up sending hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there was no vending machine involved, but crypto was used.
We do routinely see victims sending crypto. Again, they think they're wiring money.
Mm-hmm.
The money they're wiring their money to are crypto accounts. So they think, oh, I've wired my money here. And when we trace that money, we see it going into, and some of them are US-based companies. Some of them are very popular. Crypto.com, where the Lakers play. I mean, the name is on the arena. Kraken, a few other household names. And the bad guys are just manipulating those systems to create a way to get money out of the United States and into cryptocurrency. But our victims don't know that they've purchased crypto or sent money through cryptocurrency. They think they just wired money into a bank account. But yes, these exchanges are being used, providing these accounts, and people think, oh, I'm just sending my money to Wells Fargo. They don't know that their money actually went right into a crypto account.
Crazy. So I have a couple of other methods here: Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, and then just bank transfers. Are you seeing much of that?
Believe it or not, we don't see a lot of cases and I guess it's a good thing, involving Venmo or Zelle or Cash App. Those systems require you to have a U.S. bank account that is tethered to an account, Venmo and Zelle. So there is a money trail there. Mm-hmm. And so those are safe. A lot of people will say, is it safe when I go to the farmer's market? Can I use the barcode Venmo? And yeah, it is safe. Obviously, if you're using any of these programs, you want to make sure you're checking your bank account statement every month to make sure there's no manipulation, and everyone should be signed up for credit monitoring to make sure their credit cards aren't being used. But those U.S.-based systems are safe because there is a paper trail. It is different than the gift cards or the crypto transactions that are really untraceable in any way. So we don't see the bad guys trying to use that often.
I want to talk a little bit about AI. So everybody, the world is trying to come to terms with AI. Everybody's trying to get on top of it and trying to figure out how they're going to use it in their lives. And every business is trying to figure out how they're going to use it, including our own and probably your office as well. And we're all familiar with deep fakes, the fact that with AI, you can create images, audio, video that looks absolutely indistinguishable from real life. So that's one way that AI can be used to trick people and to scam people. But then there are lots of other ways that we can speculate that AI is going to be used. So have you seen AI being used to date, and where do you think it's going?
I tell you, when we talk about AI, I think people right away think of like the fake grandchild voice, or maybe, someone in your life that where you can mimic a voice, right? Someone could fake your name and then call every client at Elder Law Advocacy and say, "Oh, your monthly subscription's due. Everyone send your $100 in," or something like that. And that's very scary. I see it in a smaller way that is scary, because I think one of the ways that we've been teaching people, and this goes back to how you have to keep evolving the education and outreach here. One of the main things that we've been telling people for years, right, is when you get that email where there's a misspelled word, right, you could tell someone doesn't speak English as their first language, and they wrote an email that says it's from Chase Bank. Well, now the scammers can say, "Hey, ChatGPT, can you write a letter that says it's from Chase Bank, and it's telling someone that they need to pay a $5,000 fee or something?" And so that's scary, because they can mimic that. Or can you create a letterhead or a logo, something to make a letter look more official? So I do think there's a lot of little ways that the scammers can definitely up their game, so to speak, using just a little help from AI to kind of improve their approach to us. But as I was saying earlier, I really do. I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and I really do think that hopefully among us advocates that we can impress upon everyone in this space that the AI hopefully can be implemented to help us on the front end, to be that firewall to keep these scammers from reaching us in the first place. That's really the only way that we're going to bend the curve against all the scam activity, is if we prevent the scammers from being able to contact us in the first place. And I think that AI could be the key to doing that.
One thing I've thought of is forcing AI companies to have some kind of watermarking in anything that's produced by AI, not on the front end, so it's just visible, but just some way that it can be detected. So some piece of code that's in there that says, "Oh, this was AI." We don't have to actually figure out. I mean, forensics, I'm sure, has ways of figuring it out now, maybe, but
Right.
next year, are they going to be able to? I doubt it. I don't know.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, in terms of how scammers will probably be using it, or already are, is putting lists of names that they buy off the black market into an AI platform and saying, "Figure out the most diabolical way, or the key to this person's psychology. What is the
Right.
pain point that I should use in order to get this person to do what I want? I'm trying to get this person to do something that's going to help the world. So what should I do to really make sure that he'll work with me?" And then using that
Yeah.
for nefarious purposes.
It's very scary to think about. And yes, we know all that information is out there. I've seen information that on a scammer's cell phone of what they were able to access about some random victim that they were preying on. And yeah, it's purchasing information. It's social media, following, and what people's likes or don't likes, and what organizations they're a part of. So there's no question that AI can be used, I guess, to kind of bring all of that into one lens and help the scammer to target someone.
Yeah. And the other thing that we have to think about is, no matter how careful we are, like with the multi-factor authentication and using very difficult passwords and whatever it is that we can do to protect ourselves, the companies we work with, they get hacked all the time. And very often those companies are not divulging that they've been hacked in real time, or not divulging everything that was collected. And so I have a couple of online security platforms that I use, and I've been I think my name has been involved in over 100 different hacks. Pretty much everything is
Right.
out there somewhere. People can buy it for nefarious purposes. So, from that perspective, AI is really something that can be combined with what's available on the
Right.
black market is just terrifying. So,
You're
I hope you're right about
right.
how AI gets ahead of the scammers. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and I tell people too that not to be afraid. All of our information is out there. We've all been, I mean, our hospital systems, the stores we shop at, they've all been hacked. They have our emails, they have our credit card numbers. So it is important to monitor the financial activity. I think credit monitoring is very important for people to get a monthly check-in. You know, I subscribe to one of them, and I get a email once a month, and it says this is every time your credit's been accessed, and once in a while something does pop up that makes you think twice. But yeah, it used to be people would panic, say, "Oh, I'm the victim of identity theft," and they'd be very unsettled. And I try to calm people down, like our information's all out there. The question is, you know, can you keep it protected before it gets to a problem that ends up being too difficult to solve? And we do see people
Mm-hmm.
that are completely consumed in trying to fix their credit once they've been kind of, you know, run through the system, and it goes on for years without them realizing it. It could be a real mess to clean up out of.
Very true. And a good reason for people to go to annualcreditreport.com and check their credit reports. And if they see anything that is not theirs, put a freeze on it, do some kind of investigation, see if anyone's been taking credit out in your name, things like that.
Right.
I want to talk about, we've talked on it tangentially, the psychological warfare that scammers use to compel people to do things that are not in their best interest. I just want to talk about a few of those things, just in terms of how they affect people. So, number one, emotional manipulation, and the subcategories I have here are fear and urgency, excitement and greed, sympathy and goodwill, and loneliness and trust. So, can you say something about how the scammers are able to use these things in order to get people to do things they shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, right. Well, they're preying on, you know, it's in our core human nature, right? A natural reflex, I guess, to any of those stresses that you mentioned is wanting to fix the problem that's causing the stress or the distress that someone's in. And so preying on that, you know, and I think the term is social engineering. You know, when I see them talking about it, they're using social engineering to create this problem to get the natural human response to that problem, which is save my bank account, protect my family member, don't get in trouble, clear your name. And then they are using very sophisticated and reasonably plausible scenarios, you know, to get people to not talk about their problems, to say that there's a judge that there's a gag order. You know, when they invent that story about your name being involved in some hack and there's child pornography involved or the drug cartels, they will say there's an FBI case. You can't talk about this. You can't call your children. You'll be, you know, it's always that if you do what is in your natural instinct to respond to one of these things, if you do that thing, it gets worse.
Right.
And that's what those are the buttons they're pushing, is your natural reflex is I'm going to call my kid or I'm going to go talk to the neighbor. And they are preying on that and saying, no, like I said before, your bank teller, right? You're trusted. This is the worst that I've seen is the way that they're using that scam to wipe out people's entire nest egg is to get them convinced that their lifelong financial planner is in on the scam somehow. And imagine this scenario, and really, you have to think how devastating this is, right? The elderly couple, and maybe the husband managed all the finances, and now the husband is deceased, and there's a widow, and she's left managing things that she never was involved in her entire life, and now she's managing everything. And the financial planner that her and her husband used for 30 years, well, now she's being told by a scammer that person is under investigation. So she can't trust that person, but she has to secretly get the money back without arousing suspicion. And this is a real scenario that plays out all the time, where this victim is now calling her lifelong financial planner and doing very uncharacteristic things, withdrawing the 401k plan, the investment plan, in order to get it into the safe account. And it's devastating. And they are crying behind the scenes. They're devastated. And the financial advisor knows something is weird. He keeps saying, I don't like what I'm hearing. I don't like this. And the scammers are telling the victim over and over again, it's okay. You tell them you have an investment. You need to help your sister out, with an investment, or someone's in trouble in the family. And because the financial people, the planners and the bankers, they are running interference. They're asking questions, but at some point there's this customer service obligation to not interfere with the desire of their clients. We're seeing this money pour out, and it's devastating. And to add another layer on that, while I'm talking about that scenario, is something that we stumbled into recently, which is when we have our victims that don't just give a $10,000 or $50,000, but they liquidate their investment account. What do they incur at the end of that after they've been wiped out of their entire life savings? Well, the IRS now is going to send them a tax bill because they've sold off their entire portfolio. And so we do have lots of victims that have a six-figure tax bill at the end of all this. And believe it or not, there's in the tax bill that was signed, I think in 2019, that casualty and loss theft deduction was taken away. And so people are not getting the recourse. They can't write off those losses, and they're stuck with, unless, the IRS has come out with a side letter that's just last year, which thank goodness is a huge victory for advocates, which says a small percentage of scam victims can try to write the losses off, but for a lot of scam victims, they're still unable to. And that's one law. I was actually fortunate enough to be invited to testify in Washington last year with the Senate Committee on Aging. And that was one law that was being looked at, but unfortunately, there's a lot of gridlock in Washington, and we can't rely on this elder justice laws to come anytime soon. So we really need to do what we can in our community to try to help these victims out.
Wow, that's really important. I guess we should look into that. We work on certain legislation that protects seniors, so that's not something we've been working on, but I will look into that. Let's talk a little bit about self-protection strategies, and related to that, so let's talk about that first. Then I also want to talk about what people should do the second that they realize they have been victimized, or if they think they might have been. So when you tell people that what we've just described is the current reality, what are you telling them to do about it? Like, how should they be approaching life, electronics, whatever it is? What are you telling people?
Well, I'm trying to tell people everything that we're talking about. That's the one thing. When we go out into the community, even talking to sophisticated people, they don't have an understanding really of the nuance of the latest scams. So I think arming yourself with the information is really the key in getting the message out. And we need to figure out how we can reach all of society. I often say every morning there should be the weather report, the traffic report, and there should be a scam report. Like, it needs to be reinforced over and over again. Sadly, we're seeing victims that I've had victims come watch me speak in a seminar, and then I hear 6 months later, I'll see them again, and they'll say, I feel terrible. I've even come, to elder fraud education program, and I still fell victim to something. So we have to keep reinforcing it. Mm-hmm. But it, that you've asked the key question, which is what can people do? And really, it's educating the whole of society, not just seniors, and it's advocacy. We're reaching a point where like I said earlier, the FTC latest numbers and estimating all the underreporting included is upwards of $200 billion a year. So we're reaching a tipping point where people have to realize this is unacceptable. And so we all have to, as a community, we have to speak up and demand more from the government, from the technology companies, for the retail companies, from the financial companies, from law enforcement. Everyone can be doing more, and everyone is doing so much already. You can't really point a finger at everyone because the same technology companies and the financial companies, and they're doing so much. They're spending so much money, but we need to really work together between law enforcement and the private sector to identify the places where we can educate each other on how to really intervene effectively and stop the fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is doing their own thing, and I think what that has done is created this really siloed approach to fighting it, where everyone has their own strategy, but without a collaborative approach, which is what some other countries are doing, mainly Australia and the UK and Singapore. There's fascinating models there. You can look them up, but at the highest level of government, they have someone that is in charge of fraud and fighting to connect everyone's efforts in order to bend the curve. Like I said, we're seeing 30-40% increases year to year.
Right.
And we're really reaching a tipping point where people, need to hit the streets, and say that this is unacceptable and we need a whole of society, whole of government approach to fight it.
Yeah. Well, I think you actually are kind of a pioneer in terms of making sure that collaboration is actually happening. Like the task force you've created and a lot of the meetings that I attend, you've actually been instrumental in getting a lot of different levels of law enforcement and just individuals who work with seniors. So talk about those initiatives that you've taken.
Yeah, we realize that we can't do it alone, that you need to really have everyone at the table, that anyone that's connected to this effort. We can't be siloed in our approach. And we can't, again, wait for Washington to solve all our problems. The problem's too big, really. I had assumed at the beginning of this, the FBI must have this under control. Me as just a regular citizen thought that. But when I got into the problem and realized how massive and how huge this is, it's bigger than the FBI can
Right.
handle. Even as a San Diego task force where we are leading the country, this effort that we have is the first of its kind, and we are doing things that no one else is doing. The reality check that I want everyone to understand is that we are working less than 1% of the cases that are being reported here in San Diego. That's a sobering thought. We had 1,500 reported cases last year. Now, we know that number is so much greater just here in our county. And for people watching abroad, San Diego's the size of Connecticut. There's 3 million people in our county. So it's a huge number. And we can't get to the cases that are being reported. And so it shows you how you need to bring everyone together. And so what we decided is that we're not going to solve this problem. We can't prosecute our way out of the problem. We can't arrest our way out of the problem. We can't educate our way out of the problem. It's all of it. And what we're trying to do really is be the model for the rest of the country to see, hey, San Diego isn't saying, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. That's unfortunately the narrative that millions of victims have been told here throughout the United States over the last 10 years. They are devastated. They've just been wiped out financially, maybe emotionally, psychologically. They go for help. They walk into the police station. They walk into the FBI. They walk into a DA's office, and they are pouring their heart out, and they're told this horrible thing. I'm sorry, there's nothing that we can do. Here we are, in this incredible country with all these resources, and it's like we're all complicit in someone losing their entire life savings that they work so hard for. It doesn't make sense why that is okay, why we're all complicit in it. And so we are using this collaborative and bringing together really to do what we can for San Diego victims, but also to provide a roadmap. Because we have the leadership of Summer Stephan here in our county, who's been so instrumental in supporting us, and the support of the FBI locally, which is unprecedented anywhere in the country for this effort, we need to show people the results so that other people can start duplicating what we're doing, join forces, and then this can grow organically at a grassroots level, as opposed to waiting for Washington to solve it for all of us. I think if Elder Justice Task Force popped up all over the country and then started connecting, that we can intervene and disrupt these money laundering networks that are taking all our money. And there are some efforts already that are established and trying to lead that fight. One very exciting development is the National Elder Fraud Coordination Center, NEFCC, which is started by the retired FBI agent, the supervisor that started our task force with us 6 or 7 years ago. So he's now leading in conjunction with AARP, and there's already several private corporations that have signed on to it. And that is one example of how we could take this siloed approach and really develop this elder justice task force model that we're using here in San Diego and build it out around the country and then connect it all.
Is this NEFCC, is that based in San Diego?
No.
No. Okay.
They're operating out of a kind of a virtual model. They have resources all around the country.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. That's amazing that you're doing that and trying to get it to organically move beyond what we're able to do here in San Diego. I have, in terms of self-protection, what people can do themselves, I have 5 items here that I put down. I'm going to read them to you. If there's any that you want to expand on, please do so. One is, it's not enough to just say, okay, I won't respond to the texts I get that seem weird. I won't respond to the emails that mention blah, 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 because it's always morphing. So here are the things that we can do sort of in a broader sense. Healthy skepticism. We have to all have that all the time. Number 2, verify identity independently. So if somebody contacts you and says they're calling from X or they're your grandson or they're whatever it is, and you have 1% doubt, make sure that you call them using a number that you know is theirs. Number
Want me to jump in there?
Sure,
You want to get through the whole list first?
No, go for it.
So this is a scary thing about the scammers, again, showing you their sophistication. And we have to be careful in what we're telling our victims to do. We know now that if you go right now onto Google and you search for the Geek Squad, because maybe you've been scammed and someone told you you need to call the Geek Squad at Best Buy so they could come in and see if your computer's okay, that if you Google the Geek Squad, what's most likely to happen is that the top search result that comes back is going to be another scammer. Ugh. And so, and Google has told us that they're doing everything they can with their algorithms, but they can't scrub the bad numbers off faster than the bad guys can put new numbers back up there. And so we had a victim most recently that lost $1 million here in San Diego, and she's an incredible person. And she said that she got that Microsoft pop-up ad, and she had gotten the education before. She said she knew that that number was going to be a scam. And so she went and Googled Microsoft support, and it led her right back into the scammers. Now, I've researched it since. There's really no real number for Microsoft support. They don't want phone call. They don't have a call center. They want you to, they want you to just patch, do the update, the Windows update, and maybe you could send a message. But there's really not a Windows or Microsoft support call center where you could get a live person. I've tried very hard and dug deep into Microsoft's own website to get to a point where they offer a phone number. So that's not a number that if you just Google it, like it pops up. It's not like Verizon customer service. Like Microsoft does not have that. So we need to be careful. Here's the other thing. They're spoofing phone numbers to make it look like the number that's you're supposed to be calling. So I had a victim recently. She got a call from Chase Bank. Again, this victim had gone through the education. She knew what to do. So she pulled her, while she's on with Chase on the phone, they called her and said there's some issue. She went into her purse, opened her wallet, and looked at her bank card and saw the phone number on the back of her credit card, looked at her phone, and it was the same number. And she said, okay, I'm talking to Chase. Because they spoofed it, right? They could spoof any number, and they do it. Maybe you've gotten a call, it says San Diego Sheriff or San Diego District Attorneys. They can call you from the actual sheriff's phone number. It's very inexpensive that they're using a spoofing software. So they can make whatever phone number they want appear on your phone, even though the real phone number behind that is a foreign IP phone number that's untraceable, basically. So we have to be careful. Like you said, call the real number. So for this person, they didn't take that additional step of hanging up and then calling that number back. They verified it by looking at the phone number on their phone and said, oh, that's a good number for Chase. So we have to be even more sophisticated in the fact checking that we're doing. And it's a scary proposition. And so I would say if there's any issue with your bank, just take a drive down there, because these issues don't come up that often. But if you have a real issue with your bank and they're calling you and there's something that you need to solve, just drive to the corner shopping center and go into your bank. But unfortunately, the state of affairs that we're in 2026 is that 99% of these are going to be scams. They're not going to be legitimate concerns.
Unreal. Number 3, regulate emotions. We talked about the what I called psychological warfare, and you called social engineering, but that's what they're using. They're pushing buttons that until they push the right one that activates you, either through fear or through some kind of bias or through greed or whatever it is. When they figure out what makes you susceptible, they will not stop pressing that button until they take everything you have.
That's right. And so playing into that psychological response, we actually came up with a public outreach campaign this year at the DA's office. And our slogan is stop, hang up, and tell someone. We're thinking all these fancy things like beware the tech scam, and we're thinking of all these words that really aren't going to resonate with anyone. And what we're trying to tap into is that point where, it's like, when you're driving a little too fast and the police car pulls in behind you, right? You're all of a sudden whatever, the dopamine, whatever it is, your adrenaline starts going. There's a chemical release in your head. Like there's something physiologically that's happening to your body. And at that point, that's our message, right? Is to tell people on the front end that nothing bad is happening to anyone, right? No one that's getting these phone calls, people are showing up at their house to hurt them or anything. So the message really is to stop and immediately hang up the phone. Don't believe any of the hype that you're in danger or you're going to get in trouble, and think it through, right? There's no scenario in your life up until this point where money has had to be paid immediately or something terrible happens to someone, right? So it's that moment where it's cutting through that fear to just hang up the phone and then tell someone immediately, right? There's no scenario where something out of the blue is going to hit you where if you go and talk to your neighbor or call your children that you're going to get in trouble. And so stop, hang up, and tell someone. That message of it's going to be okay. Just you have to end this relationship, this call, this emailing, whatever it is. Close your computer, turn it off. There's a lot of people that come up to me and they want to take on the scammers. My advice is just eliminate that contact altogether. People think they could take them on, outwit them, outsmart them, and they still end up falling for something because they make themselves more susceptible just by having that communication open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's particular. I mean, there's a small subset. This is really good advice for everyone, but there is a subset of our population. I think especially the older adults, who they're kind of in a really susceptible place. Just they're starting to lose memory. They're starting to have less function than they had their whole life, and so they're really just trying to get by and really doubting themselves at times, doubting their memory, doubting their ability to discern what is going on. And for them to get something like this, it's very easy for us to say, well, take a step back, think about it, don't talk to your friends. But, what gets them activated is probably just thinking like there's something going on that they can't get on top of.
Right.
And that becomes something that creates enormous anxiety for them.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I recommend to people that before they find themselves in this scenario to think about what would happen if this did happen to them and what safety measures are in place. A very practical thing that people can do without making someone a co-signer on their bank account. You could, for example, put your adult child to get a text notification if you are doing any banking transactions over what you set the limit, $100, $500, $1,000, just so someone's getting a text message that a $1,000 withdrawal was just made or that transaction took place, just to get, right? Because some people now have the trusted person on their account, but we're not seeing enough people being contacted because we're often seeing a lot of money leaving people's accounts very quickly before a family member is notified. And so signing up for a notification like that is a great measure to set up so that there's someone else out there that's just going to get a little message that says, oh, this credit card's being used somewhere and it's over the limit that we set.
Yeah. That also would circumvent the manipulation aspect of it because like we had a client who, as you said, the scammers will tell the victims what the narrative has to be when they're at the bank, for example. So we had a client who went to the bank and wanted to transfer $300,000 or $400,000 to Thailand. And the scammer said, well, they're going to tell you that you shouldn't do it. They're going to tell you that it looks like a scam. Here's what you have to say. You have to say that you have a real estate development in Thailand that you're investing in, that you've been to, you've seen it, you have the potential deed. Like they have this whole narrative that is spelled out for the victim so that when they get to the bank, it can happen. And it sort of overcomes all the security and the teller's doubt about what's going on. So having this kind of automatic notification sent to a third party would make a huge amount of sense. So the last two self-protection strategies I have, one is to stay informed, which is what we're trying to do here. And
easier said than done. It's hard.
Yes, for sure. It's very, very difficult. Actually, it's impossible.
Yeah. Well, there's so much information out there too. And that's one thing. That's what we try to do is get the message out that's in the police report from last week, right? We want that current information out. There's so much well-intended programs and money being spent on some things that honestly were, are 10, 15 years old, right? Like identity theft or the IRS scam or the Social Security, and people, there's just so much education out there that I think people just start turning it off, right?
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
And so we have to figure out the most effective way. Like I go out and tell people that our victims are giving gold to the scammers, and they're usually shocked by that. Now, it's so prevalent in our community, like everyone, how do we get that to be common knowledge amongst our community? Right. And I don't know the answer to that. Can you do it with billboards? Can you do what's the effective way to reach people so that everyone in our community knows? Just like you would know if someone gave you a weird check and said, "Hey, walk into the bank and cash us," and you could keep $20. You would know that was someone was giving you a fake check to cash, right? So how do we get this information into the common lexicon? That's the real struggle.
Through these.
Yeah. And it's really, and when I go out into the community, I tell people, even though I'm the mouthpiece and I've been fighting for this for so long, everyone else is just as powerful as me or Summer Stephan or the director of the FBI right now, really, because you have the power to educate yourself and then educate your community, your workplace, your church, your temple, your book club, whatever it is. If you could save that person that is sitting next to you at the table at lunch from losing $1 million, I mean, what a service you are offering, right? And so we need to educate people, and then we need them to go out and tell everyone in their network, all the things that we're telling them.
Absolutely. And so the last self-protection strategy I have here is learn to say no. That's hard for a lot of people.
Again, easier said than done, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially when they've got all these stories about how you're about to lose everything.
And a lot of people just don't want to hang up on someone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's another part of it. Yeah. We say just hang up the phone. And some people, like you said, when you tap into someone's isolation, especially, they're lonely, right? They're probably guilt tripping their children. They don't call enough, and they're sitting there and their phone rings out of the blue, and they haven't talked to anyone in a couple of days. How can they resist that temptation to pick up that phone? And it looks like it's from the same area code that you're living in, that, oh, maybe this is a neighbor. What is this?
Right. I mean, it's impolite, basically.
Right.
We're taught from our childhood that, you can't just ignore people or tell them to go away. That's just not the thing you do. And so when you get that weird text from someone that says, "Are you on for lunch?" Do you just block them immediately? Yeah, I do, but
No, a lot of people probably say, "Oh, I'm sorry,
yeah,
you have the wrong number." Oh, but
you
no.
seem like such a nice person. Thank you for responding. That's where it starts. So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about numbers. Let's talk about the underreporting. We've touched on this. Like there are a lot of reasons why these things don't get reported. What are some of the reasons why seniors and people in general just are reticent?
Yeah, there is in this real serious feeling of shame and embarrassment and humiliation when you've fallen for something, when you've been duped, and that no matter how old you are, people don't want to admit it. I mean, people take a lot of pride in saying, "Oh, I got this email and I knew right away it was a scam." And those same people, if they fall for something, these are very proud people, retired people, as people that were established in whatever industry they were in, and from, and we, runs the whole spectrum of the victims that we have are people in former law enforcement, former educators,
Lawyers.
Yeah, lots of anyone. The former head of the CIA and the FBI, he's got some great videos out there trying to reduce the stigma because he himself fell for it. So it really is across the spectrum. And there is a real feeling of shame and embarrassment, and we need to fight through that, because really the only chance that we have of intervening from a law enforcement standpoint is if people report right away. The chances are slim anyway. The odds are stacked against us, but if you report it right away, there is some hope of some intervention. And then the other side of that is the only way that we're going to get the resources we need to fight this adequately is if we're accounting for all the scams. And so some people might be saying, you know what, I'm not going to report it. I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to get my money back, and I don't want to expose myself and put myself out there. But that's one case that's not going to be added on to the loss amount and the victim amount, which is what it's that I'm telling you as an advocate that is valuable. When we go to Sacramento, when we go to Washington, D.C., when we go to our local leaders, we need to say, this is how big the problem is here in our county, how many people it's affecting, and those numbers are moving the needle. So I invite people, if they have been the victim, to make a report with the FBI, their database at ic3.gov. It's actually a very easy way to report, because you could do it from your home computer. You don't have to wait for, sometimes you call the non-emergency police line. You might have to wait hours for the resources to come out. But to report to the FBI as the least you can do will get that case counted in our jurisdiction, right? They're saying, where do you live? How old are you? How much money did you lose? How did you lose it? And then some of the other detailed information that's critical to our task force.
Can you get there at ic3.org and ic3.gov? Okay.
I'm sorry, ic3.gov. The letter I, the letter C, the number 3.gov.
And what happens once you report there? What happens?
Well, that goes into an FBI database. A lot of people assume, I've reported it to the FBI. They're going to assign an FBI agent and he's going to work my case. So again, we need to be realistic. The FBI is getting hundreds of thousands of these reports a year. But what it does enable us to do from a law enforcement perspective is to connect the dots. I told you before, we're working less than 1% of the cases, but trying to be impactful on the cases that we can investigate and prosecute by bringing down these larger networks. But by reporting to IC3 and putting information into that database, we can see where the connections are made and identify where there's dozens of victims being impacted by the same scammer, right? The same phone number, maybe the same Bitcoin wallet that people are sending their money to, the same bank account that people are wiring their money to. And if enough dots are connected, that's the case that's going to rise to the top of the pile for an actual investigation. And so you might think, oh, I only lost $2,000 and I don't want to go through the trouble and I'm embarrassed. But that might be the key, right? You having that phone number or that email address or that bank account that you sent your money to could be the key to connecting this large-scale investigation together.
Okay. So if you put your report into IC3 and it happens to be part of say, a big scam network in our community, there's a chance that FBI will start investigating that and may follow up with you at some point. Is that probably how it might work?
Yes.
Okay.
So someone could follow up with you from the FBI or local law enforcement.
Okay.
So the IC3 reports are more commonly being used by task forces like the one we're in. And so people that are working in collaboration with the FBI to stop this fraud will check.
Okay. Any new trends or cases that you've seen?
Yeah, every few months something comes along that we've never seen before, and we are seeing a real huge influx of something that was unusual to us. We had been seeing these cases where people were told to withdraw lots of cash or buy gold, and then couriers were coming to pick it up or they were shipping it somewhere. Well, in the past few months, we've seen a real increase in cases where victims are getting phone calls from their actual, it's not their actual bank, but it's where they do their banking. So it's US Bank or Chase Bank, and it's someone that knows some information about your account. They might have the last 4 digits, or they know something like a recent transaction that you did there. And what the scammer is reporting is that there's some unauthorized activity on your account, and they need to come pick up your debit card in order to complete the investigation, or that they want to destroy it and replace the card. And so they're sending a courier to our victim's house to grab the debit card. And then, of course, you can imagine within a few hours, we're seeing the debit card being used to purchase postal money orders. They take it to the Apple store and they buy thousands of dollars of devices, or they try ATM withdrawals. And we've had people lose from $40 to $40,000. And for some reason, the scam, we had never seen it until a few months ago, and now we have dozens of cases throughout the county that we're currently investigating. We've arrested a couple of the suspects in these cases. We have other cases going on. So that's an example of, for whatever reason, the scammers see an opportunity. They see maybe people are becoming more aware maybe of the cash and gold, and so they're saying, like you said before, how can we get money? What's the latest thing that we can do? What can we take advantage of now? And so that's it. They're picking up a credit card right from people's houses.
Wow. Always creative. So we had talked about, we were talking about the underreporting issue, and we mentioned shame and secrecy. I just wanted to mention a couple of other things. Fear being one that we've discussed, because there's always some urgency, some crisis, something horrible is going to happen. You mentioned a bunch of those. Yep. And then there's also a fear amongst seniors that they're going to lose their rights or autonomy, because once they get to a certain point, and if they're starting to lose their memory and they're uncertain about decisions they're making, they don't want to be in a situation where somebody else takes over their bank account, takes over their functioning in other ways. So there's that, which also plays into the memory issue, because that's another aspect, that seniors may be scammed and then they're not even really sure what happened. And so they're scared to talk about that aspect too. It's like they're not sure. Did I give that guy the money? Did he steal the money?
Yeah, there's a whole confluence of those dynamics.
Right.
And the confusion plays into it. And for seniors especially, the fear of telling their children is a powerful force that is working against us, of having to call their children, because of that fear that that's going to result in the loss of independence. And it makes a lot of sense. That conversation about, hey, you shouldn't be driving, that's hard enough. And when you're going to have that talk with your parents about the ability to make financial decisions or the ability to live independently, that is a huge motivating force. And it's definitely something the scammers are playing into. And it's terrible for the victims to have to go through those feelings. And, a lot of times we have victims who, again, are falling victim because the scammers are so effective and so good at what they're doing. It doesn't mean that they have reached the end of their independence, or that they can't exist in the world anymore. And so that's part of the messaging
Right.
that we need to get out there also, that sometimes the scammers just prevail and they're so effective in accomplishing what they do. But the victim is no more susceptible than you or me or some college kid or whatever. Just the scammers got you with your guard down, and were able to get some money from you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even though those are fears that people have, I mean, sometimes they're in families where the kids are trying to take over control. So that's another dynamic that makes it even more difficult. If you feel like your children are trying to take your assets, are you gonna go to them and tell them that you're a victim of a scam? Then,
Right.
what's the next step going to be? So they're very hard dynamics, and some of it has to do with family situations.
It does. We take for granted that everyone has a trusted person in their family. Some
Right.
people don't. A lot of people don't have that really trusted child or grandchild that they can, sign over legal authority to, or have them join their accounts. So, people should talk to their financial advisors. There's professional fiduciaries. Of course, you want to be careful in selecting anyone that's going to have any authority to, to help you with your financial management. But those are some options out there. But you want to be making sure you're talking to several professionals and making sure that you don't get scammed by those people. You
Right.
always need to have some redundancy in looking for help from multiple sources.
Yeah. Yeah. Very hard. Just a couple of questions to finish off our conversation. One is, what should people do if they know they've been scammed? They just figured it out. What are the first things they should do in order to make sure that they're preserving evidence and following up with whatever agency is necessary? What do they do?
Yeah, great question. The first thing people should do before they call the police or try to make a report is to try to stop the bleeding. If money's been lost, that the first energy should be spent on pulling the money back. We know that for a fact, that once the money's gone, it's usually out of reach. And so the best place to contact is the bank, where you might go drive right to the bank and say, I've just realized I've been scammed. Whatever money I just took out, whatever money I just sent, is there anything the bank can do to pull it back? Sign whatever affidavits they need, make whatever report. But there's some hope. There's some hope, depending on the scenario that you're in, that money can be pulled back.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using, the ATM machine, if you're wiring money, whatever that financial company was, if you wired your money to somewhere else, call that bank. Call every financial institution you can and ask to freeze the money or to pull it back. And again, you might be successful, you might not be, but that is worth your energy. Because once the money's gone, in so many of these cases, it's too late. On the other side, as far as information gathering, again, it's a great question. Get a notepad out. You want to scribble down anything that you can that would help identify the scammers or the people picking up your money. Every phone number that was used, every email address, every bank account that you sent money to, every the wiring instructions, where the bank was that you were sending it to. It'll say, there's a receiving bank. Any identifiers, with cryptocurrency, there's Bitcoin wallet information. So really, we call them identifiers.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that, again, you could throw into these law enforcement databases that could be used to connect the dots to a greater network of scam activity will increase the chances you have that your case will be investigated and that there might be some positive intervention, either with people being held accountable or some money coming back to you.
Okay. And who should they be calling and reporting to, and who can help?
Who could help? We want 2 reports being made. Local law enforcement, wherever you live, whatever that agency is in the neighborhood that you live in, and then also to the FBI's IC3. That's for the best results. We want both of those reports being made. And people have to understand that for a lot of cases, the cavalry isn't going to be able to come in and save them. But to document it and to report it to those two as quick as possible. Really, the best opportunity for intervention is reporting it immediately. And that plays into the fear and embarrassment factor, because most of our victims, honestly, Jamie, we don't find out until it's been 2-3 weeks or 2 or 3 months. When they finally get the courage to tell their children, then their children run to the police station and say, help, help. They're frantic. And we say, when was the last time you sent your money? And then they look and it's, oh, this was 2 months ago. And by then it's too late. But within a few days or maybe a week, 2 weeks, we've had some miracles where we're able to pull some things back. But there's an urgency to reporting it. Don't say, oh, let's wait till Monday and call the police. It really could be the difference between being able to recover your money and not.
I think it's important to also recognize, even though cryptocurrency is basically encrypted, anonymous, it can be traced. Like there are forensic Bitcoin and crypto investigation companies that now, and actually there's some law enforcement labs that do the same work. And so if you ended up sending crypto electronically, that's something that should be recorded and reported and also should be investigated.
Yes. Yes. And again, there's an asterisk and a caution flag, because there are scammers presenting themselves out there. Some of them are businesses here in the United States that are law firms in some cases, or crypto tracing companies, and they're making promises to victims that can't be upheld. So as of now, what we're telling any victim is never pay for any service outside of using maybe law enforcement capabilities to actually, if anyone's promising that they could go in, trace your stolen Bitcoin and pull it back for you.
Oh, yeah.
That is unable to be done, but they are advertising that they can recover your money.
Oh.
So not just trace it, but that they could pull back, or they'll say, oh, we traced it and you could bring this to the police and they could pull it back for you. And unfortunately, there are cases where law enforcement is successful. There's a network of incredibly devoted crypto investigators all around the country. There's a third-party organization called Operation Shamrock. They are an incredible collaboration. If you've been, even if you're curious about pig butchering or you've been a victim, you must go to Operation Shamrock's website.
Erin West?
Yeah, my former district attorney colleague here in California, Erin West. She was up in Santa Clara, but she was a deputy DA. And we're so proud of her advocacy. She's part of this amazing network. But so there's been some success, but there's also a lot of failure. So we don't want anyone paying more money. In a lot of the cases, you could trace the money, and then you quickly see that that money is withdrawn from that wallet that you've sent your money to. So you might go to a Bitcoin ATM machine, transfer a few $1,000s to a wallet, and you might be able to trace that using certain tools, but the bad guys now know that, and so they're trying now to get the money off of that receiving wallet as fast as possible and get it to a third-party wallet that's, it's all being managed in, far overseas and in other countries. And so that's the message there is don't spend money. Don't ever pay money after you've been scammed to try to recover your money, because we're seeing people walk into 2 and 3 other scams. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's horrible. That's a really important point to temper expectations, because whether it's cryptocurrency or any of these other scams, recovery is so unlikely. It's just unfortunate, but that's the reality.
That's right.
A couple of just questions to end our conversation. Is there a case you can think of that has stayed with you personally that just has had an impact?
Well, on the financial case, there are lots of victims and cases that have impacted me, because I'm talking to these victims every day, and it's not lost on me every single day that someone is waking up here in our beautiful community here in San Diego. Right now, as we're talking, I know that there's a few people walking into banks somewhere in San Diego, maybe right down the street from us. They've been completely traumatized. they're being terrorized, and they are going to withdraw their life savings. And I to talk to these victims after the fact, and I know you've talked to these victims and try to help these victims to see the trauma and how broken they are, and their outlook on life changes, their ability to trust. They start to shut down and close their social circle, and I think it really does hasten their lifespan in a lot of cases. So what haunts me is that we've been at this for so many years, and to see the number of victims keep adding up despite our best efforts, that's what stays with me. And I'm so incredibly appreciative of people like you and your colleagues here at Elder Law Advocacy, and then the people that I work with in law enforcement. Most of us were not told that we were going to be in a task force to help, stop elder fraud. A lot of us have other main job responsibilities, and we started this kind of just as a side job, something to do on the side, a little side project, and it turned into this incredible thing. And we have just such devoted people who are out there fighting for these victims because, like I said at the outset, once you're exposed to these victims and you've talked to someone who's done everything right in their life and made all the right decisions, and then realize it, it's almost like they've been hit by a sniper. They're just going through their life and they turn their computer on to check their kids or grandkids out on Facebook, and a little message comes up, and that ends up destroying their life. It's that whole dynamic is that stays with you every single time it happens.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, if listeners remember one thing about scams, what should it be? That partially answers it, actually. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
I think the main message that we need to eliminate is the victim blaming. I think that's at the forefront of this. Everyone needs to understand that we're all at risk. This isn't an elder fraud only problem. Fraud is so rampant in our society. They're coming for us, all of us. We're all just going to become the next victim unless everybody does something proactive in the very micro, within our own families, within our community, within our schools, within our houses of worship, whatever organizations we're involved with. I mean, this is really, there's no more prevalent crime. I mean, you frame it like that, and it's shocking to say it. Digest that for a second. There's no more prevalent crime going on in America than the fraud that's hitting us every day. Millions of crimes being committed. And again, if we don't all take a more active approach in it, then we're really all complicit in it. And we're saying, I'm okay. We're okay as a society accepting the fact that someone could work their entire life, make all the right decisions, retire, and then because one little pop-up ad comes on their computer, that they could lose $1 million, their entire nest egg, and then be told by their bank, by their prosecutors, by their police officers, by their government, that I'm sorry, there's nothing that can be done to help you. I mean, that should just be unacceptable and a non-starter for us as a society.
Yeah, it's really catastrophic for a lot of people. It's very, very difficult. That's all I have, Scott. I really appreciate you coming in today, chatting about this. This is such an important topic, and we really appreciate what you're doing, not just in terms of with the DA's office, but beyond that and trying to educate people. So thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you. It was great being here. I appreciate it.